All right, let's get right into it. When you think about your data, your pictures, messages, all that stuff, you probably just picture them as files. But for a security pro, your data isn't just one thing. It's actually living one of two very, very different lives at any given moment.
And that brings us to a really crucial question for how we live today. Your data basically has two homes, a place where it sits still and a place where it's constantly on the move. And believe me, protecting both of them, it requires totally different game plans.
So, let's break this down. For folks in the security world, data isn't really a thing, it's more like a state of motion. It's either at rest, just sitting quietly on a hard drive, or it's in transit, zipping through the air and across networks. Getting this difference is honestly the first step to really keeping it safe. Okay, let's start with its first life, when it's just hanging out. This is what we call data at rest, kind of like a quiet sleeper.
Here's a good way to think about it. Imagine your laptop is a hotel. All your files, they're guests, just staying in their rooms on the hard drive. That's data at rest. It's stationary, it's stored, and it's just waiting. And this could be on your phone, a thumb drive, or even in some huge cloud server somewhere. Now, what's the biggest danger in this state? You might think it's some super complex hacker attack, but it's actually much simpler. It's good old-fashioned theft. Someone could literally steal your laptop, make a copy of your hard drive, or break into your cloud account. They're basically just breaking into the hotel to get to your stuff.
And this quote just hits the nail on the head. If you don't have protection, your data is completely exposed. An unencrypted device is pretty much an open invitation for anyone to flip through your most private information. So the solution is encryption. This is like putting each of those hotel guests inside a locked safe. You've got two main ways to do this: full disk encryption, which locks down the entire device, and file-level encryption, which is for securing just specific, really sensitive files.
But what happens when that data decides to leave the hotel? Well, that brings us to its second life, its daily commute.
Data in transit is any information that's actively on the move. We're talking about when you visit a website, send an email, or sync your files to the cloud. It has left the safety of your device and is now traveling out in the open across all sorts of networks.
And here, the danger changes completely. It's not about burglary anymore. Now, it's about eavesdropping. The risk is that someone on the same network, like, say, at your local coffee shop, could be secretly listening in, grabbing a copy of everything you send and receive.
The armor that protects our data during this journey is something called HTTPS, and it's powered by a technology called Transport Layer Security, or TLS for short. This is pretty much the gold standard for secure communication on the internet. You see it every single day. It's that little padlock icon up in your browser's address bar. And that tiny icon? It's making three huge promises. First, that your connection is private and totally unreadable. Second, that you're actually talking to the real website, not a fake one. And third, that your data hasn't been messed with along the way.
Okay, so we've got protection for data when it's sitting still and when it's moving. But both of these methods rely on one single, absolutely critical piece of the puzzle: the encryption key.
The process itself is actually beautifully simple. You start with your normal, readable data, which we call plain text. Then you add a secret ingredient, the key, using a special recipe or algorithm. And what you get out is unreadable nonsense, or ciphertext. Now, sometimes it's one secret key that locks and unlocks the data. Other times, it's a clever system with two keys, a public one anyone can use to lock it, and a private one that only you have to unlock it. But either way, there's no way to reverse the process without the right key.
So, and this is so important, the entire strength of your security comes down to that key. If an attacker gets their hands on it, all that fancy encryption becomes completely useless. It's why just managing and protecting keys is one of the biggest challenges in all of cybersecurity.
And look, this isn't just theory. When these basic rules are ignored, the consequences can be absolutely catastrophic. A perfect and painful example is the huge Equifax breach back in 2017. What went wrong was frankly shocking in its simplicity. Attackers got into their network and found massive databases of sensitive customer information just sitting there, completely unencrypted. It was like they walked into that hotel and found every single door unlocked and wide open.
But just forgetting to encrypt your data isn't the only way things can go wrong. The massive breach at Yahoo shows a totally different and maybe even scarier kind of failure.
See, in this case, the data was actually encrypted. The problem was, the attackers were so skilled that they managed to steal the digital keys themselves. And once they had those keys, all of that encrypted data became perfectly readable again. They didn't just break into the safes, they walked right in with the master combination.
So, after all that theory and some pretty scary stories, how can we actually apply this to our own lives? Well, the good news is, it's much simpler than you might think.
This quote right here perfectly captures the absolute best way to protect data in transit. It's called end-to-end encryption. It's used by apps like Signal and WhatsApp, and it means that only the sender and the receiver can ever read the message. Not even the company that runs the service can see what you're saying.
So here it is, your practical, everyday checklist. First, turn on the built-in encryption on your phone and computer. It's usually just a switch in your settings. Second, make sure you're always using sites with HTTPS. Third, use a VPN on public Wi-Fi. It creates a secure private tunnel for your data. Fourth, encrypt your backups before you upload them. And last but not least, seriously, lock your screen when you get up. You'd be amazed how much data theft is still just plain physical.
And this, right here, is the mindset shift we all kind of need to make. Thinking about digital security isn't about being paranoid. It's just good digital hygiene. I mean, you don't brush your teeth because you expect to get a cavity tomorrow, right? You do it because it's the smart, preventative thing to do.
So, what's the ultimate takeaway from all this? Well, your data lives two different lives, one at rest and one in transit, and you have to protect them both. In our world today, encryption isn't some optional extra. It is the essential safety feature, the digital seatbelt you should never, ever go without.